Hello, welcome to Sound and Fury Book Reviews. As usual, I am Tina. Today I'm doing my end of year wrap up. This is where I basically do a little award ceremony for all the books I read this year. Well, not all of them, as I read around 100 of them. But I've got some categories. I'm going to list off some books that are nominated by me for the categories, and then I'm going to tell you which book won said category. Now, there is a rule. The rule is that no book can win more than once, because this way, it'd be like the same 5 or 6 books over and over again. So if you see that I gave a certain book, a certain category, a certain book, and you're like, I know you liked this book more, it's because it's coming up in another category, I promise. The categories are pretty random. They start pretty typical, and then they kind of like spiral into kind of like weird and funny stuff. So I hope you enjoy this. It's a lot of fun. Just because I didn't pick your favorite book of the year doesn't mean I think your book of the year is bad. This is just a subjective thing, and I enjoy doing it. So I picked a favorite book that I read each month, and I'm going to tell you what my top 12 books were overall. For January was The Trials of Empire by Richard Swan. This is the third part of the Justice of Kings book, whatever, Empire of the Wolf, I don't know. For February, it was The Woods All Black, which is a LGBTQ plus historical fiction, literary fiction horror. It was really good. It was by Lee Mandello. For March, my favorite book was Grey Dog, which is another historical fiction horror. April was The Ministry of Time, which is a sci-fi romance. You've probably heard of it. For May, it's The Redemption of Morgan Bright, which is a psychological horror book. I loved it. June was Smother Moss, which is a folk horror set in the 90s. July was Asunder, which is a fantasy about a woman with a dead guy in her head trying to get him home. It's good. August is The Last Shield, which is a Die Hard adaptation in a fantasy world. It is amazing. September was Where I End, which is a body horror novella. Very, very tense and a lot of stuff going on in that one. October is The Mountain Crown, which is a fantasy novella. Has a lot of kind of discussions around colonialism and things like that, and has a lot of dragons in it. It's good. November was Titan Shade, which is an urban fantasy detective story. Really fun characters. And then December was De-Inception, which is a sci-fi thriller. I've got some runners-up. These are books that I just loved that, it was a hard decision some months. Some months I had 2 favorites. I just had to pick one. So runners-up, My Darling Dreadful Thing, which was a gothic horror, psychological horror, really cool. Gog Magog and La Gluta, which was a duology that came out, one at the start of the year and one at the end, about this lady on a boat. It's a quest narrative story, really cool world building, weird fantasy basically. The Other Valley, which is about I kind of explain it because you won't understand. So it's set in this valley where I read it back in like March, so forgive me if I forget the basic details, but it's a valley, and then a few kilometers to the one side, to the west, it's 25 years in the future, and the other direction is 25 years in the past, and you get like a pass once in your life to go visit these other eras to, like, I guess, see someone that died or things like that. It's really, really cool concept. It doesn't make sense practically, but it's a cool concept. Kenai, which was the winner of the self-published science fiction competition last year. That book is really good. It's like a military sci-fi time travel-y thing. It's really cool. The West Passage, which is a fantasy novel. It's like a medieval fantasy, warped, weird kind of thing. It's weird and it's awesome. Wayward, I really enjoyed, which is the historical fiction, 3 women in different time periods kind of thing. It's really good. And The Mercy of Gods, I really liked, by James S.A. Corey. Those are the guys that wrote The Expanse. About a bunch of people, of course it's about a bunch of people. So aliens come to this planet, they kidnap a bunch of people, they kill the rest of them, take these people to like this almost like business place where they're forcing them to do these experiments, and like I think the whole thing is like about social control. It's really interesting. So yeah, if I had to pick though a favorite book of the year out of all of those, it would be Asunder. I really loved Asunder. You can check out my review for it. I'm going to post it at the end as the like suggested video. It's just a mesmerizing novel. I'm still thinking about it. Like when I look at this list and I'm like, which ones still sit with me? And it's like all of them, but this one, I guess, if I had to pick a top 5, this one, Grey Dog, Morgan Bright, Smother Moss, The Last Shield, it's all of them. I don't know. I can't decide. But anyway, Asunder is my favorite book of the year. Now, I'm going to do my most disappointing reads in order, with the last one I'll say is the one I disliked the most. So, I found Alien Clay really disappointing. I found it very boring. I could not connect with any of the characters. I thought, I'm not into alien plants. Plants, sorry, they're boring to me. I don't care about plants. I love gardening. I love plants here. I love the environment. I don't like alien plants. They're boring. That's it. The book's boring. Sorry. I know some people really like it, but I thought the book kind of sucked. Next was Dead Silence. This was about a derelict ship that they find, floating on the edge of space. Sounds awesome, right? But the way that the ghosts or whatever on the ship are handled doesn't make any sense. There's like no explanation. It's very contradictory. It felt like there was no real thought put into the book, and I just found it annoying. And it sucks because we need more derelict ship books, in my opinion. Netherford Hall. This was a Pride and Prejudice adaptation. I mean, I love a good lesbian twist, and I love a good adaptation, but I just found this book was just like, I don't know. It had a lot of stuff. It was just too rushed, and like the relationships weren't broadened out enough. It was like there was needed to be so much focus on the world building because there was so much to like have to adapt that lost the actual interesting thing. The relationships kind of fell on the backside, and so it didn't work for me. Out of my classic sci-fi's, Man Seed was my least favorite of those. That book was just bad. It's bad. It's full of a whole bunch of terrible sexist stuff. A lot of other weird stuff too. It's just like, it's like problematic on so many levels. It's like not enjoyable to read. Like I can put up with a lot of stuff in classic sci-fi because it's kind of funny, but like, I don't know. Man Seed was a bit much. That Time I Got Drunk and Saved a Demon. I hated the main character, like the male main character. Sorry, the main character, I liked her, but I hated the male main character. He was a classic alpha male, and I hate that. I hate it. I wanted him to die. I DNF'd the book at like 52%. Yeah. Ugh. Assistant to the Villain, another romance I did not like, because in this one, the world building was absolutely awful. It felt like there was, again, no thought put into it all. It felt extremely lazy, and I did not like it. And my least favorite book of the year was Do You Dream of Terra 2, which is you take a bunch of angsty teenagers, throw them in a ship, and watch them degrade. And it's boring, and it's hard to understand why they would send teenagers on this mission. All of the teenagers were just annoying, and the plot just didn't make, I don't know, a lot of it didn't make any sense. And I don't know. It's too bad because the concept was cool, and the writing itself, like the actual, when it wasn't about the teenagers, when it was kind of like narrative took a step back, it was lovely writing. I couldn't get into the characters at all. I'm not one to read about teenagers, to be honest. Okay, so down with all the negative stuff. Everything else is going to be positive. So what are my favorite covers of the year? Well, there's a lot of them. So first we have What Feasts at Night. I really think that one's cool. Grey Dog is really cool, and it's like simplicity and like the brightness of the red. I Cheerfully Refuse. I like that. Kind of looks like a painting. I love the like burning thing in the background. Like it's just it's an interesting, you kind of want to keep looking at it, Womb City, just gorgeous cover. Ocean's Godori, again, love the colors. I love the kind of central feature or featured character in the middle. It kind of feels like a poster for like a video game. I really like it. The Fireborn Blade, I could stare at this all day. It's a beautiful picture. It's just lovely. It's a lovely, lovely cover. Thrill Switch, this classic cover. There's another cover that I had as well, but this one is just, I love it. It's so bright and like neat, and like she's like, oh. The Dragon Kings of Oklahoma. I don't need to explain why this cover is great. And Titan Shade because of my boy Ajax on there. So my favorite, I really had a hard time choosing between the Fireborn Blade and Womb City. I'm going to go with Womb City just because that cover caught my eye instantly when I first saw it early or late last year when it first, because it came out in January, I think. Yeah, it's a wonderful cover. It's beautiful. Very cool, very reminiscent of like the story and stuff. It's so good. Yeah. Okay. Congratulations, Womb City. Okay, so here are my favorite novellas of the year. So we have The Fireborn Blade. We have The Woods All Black. We have What Feasts at Night. We have The Mountain Crown. Lost Ark Dreaming. The Annual Migration of Clouds. This Is How You Lose the Time War. She Who Knows. And Where I End. I gave all of these books 5 stars. I loved all of them. But my absolute favorite of all of them is The Mountain Crown. I just really enjoyed this one, and I'm really excited to read the second one pretty much like next week. My favorite classic sci-fi of the year. So we have The Infinite Battle. I just reviewed that, like, I think it was my last book review of the year. Really liked that one. The Fenris Device was really fun. Doppelganger Gambit was a blast. The Null Frequency Impulsor had some things off with it, but overall I thought it was really interesting. And Stations of the Tide was great. But of all of these, I'll have to say the Doppelganger Gambit was my absolute favorite. I mean, the cover alone is just the best. I should have put that one in my covers, but I didn't. Anyway, that's okay. Best audiobook performance. So I listened to, I think, 10 or 12 audiobooks this year. The three with the best performances, I thought, were Wayward, which had 3 narrators, The Strange, which had 1 narrator, but she did a fantastic job, and then Starling House, which had a narrator that I listened to. I think she also narrated Generation Ship that I listened to as well. So I guess I could throw that one on there because she's a good narrator. But my favorite audiobook narration was The Strange. The lady that did it had this perfect, like, an old lady twang that suited the story so well. She did a great job with with the characters' voices. She just suited the book perfectly, and I thought it was great. My favorite self-published book. I read a few. We got Space Punks. That was a lot of fun. Demon's Rage, which I really loved. Kenai, which I said was the winner last year of the SPSFC. Pink Eye, which is about, like, it's a comedy about, like, killer eyeball aliens. It's a lot of fun. The Webenack Web, which I read recently, which has a lot of fun aliens in it, and then Strange Love, which is a sci-fi romance. And my favorite of all of these was Kenai. That book was so good. I keep meaning to buy it. I keep forgetting. But no, that if there's a reason it won. It's so good. If you love it, it feels like a classic sci-fi. Actually, it's so well done. It has such an interesting storyline to it, and I loved the main character. So totally my favorite self-published this year. My favorite from a small press. So this is something that isn't one of the big 5. It's like an independent press. So De-Inception, Mountain Crown, Where I End, Smother Moss, The Last Shield, The Annual Migration of Clouds, Grey Dog, and The Redemption of Morgan Brighter, all from small presses. My favorite out of all of these is Smother Moss. I just loved Smother Moss. It was so good. It's about these 2 sisters in the 90s. The older sister is, like, going through high school. She wants to fit in. The younger sister thinks she's Rambo. She's running wild. The 2 of them are struggling to make ends meet because their mother works at this mental health facility, doesn't bring a lot of cash. The dad took off, all this stuff. And then meanwhile, all this is happening while they're kind of growing up. There's a murder that happens in the woods nearby, and the younger daughter's really obsessed with it. But it also ties into a lot of, like, the history of the place and, like, the landscape. And it's just like, it's a folk horror. So there's, like, creepy, kind of weird demon elements to it. It's really, really good. So my favorite sci-fi of the year. We have De-Inception. We have 381, which I haven't mentioned yet, but this one is about a woman going on a walk. It's weird. I don't even know. It might be a sci-fi fantasy even. I don't know. It's very interesting. It changes tense based on it changes point of view based on where she is in the story. And I thought that was a fascinating way to bring in kind of the structure into the story. And it's rare that you see that. And then we have The Other Valley, which I talked about, The Mercy of Gods, Lost Ark Dreaming, The Annual Migration of Clouds. So my favorite of these would be The Other Valley. I really love The Other Valley. It was actually the only book this year that made me cry. It was so interesting. It's a literary fiction, though. So you can't take it you can't take the plot as, like, you can't pick holes into the plot because you could easily, like, the logistics of the situation, I'm just like, but, you know what I mean? But that it doesn't even matter. That's how much I liked it. And normally I'm picky about that stuff. My favorite fantasy of the world. My favorite fantasy of the year. The Trials of Empire, Gog Magog, Demon's Rage, Fireborn Blade, The West Passage, Titan Shade, Asunder, The Last Shield, and Mountain Crown. And I'd have to pick Titan Shade. I thought this was so fun. I love a good detective story. And this is a detective story with a bunch of cool fantasy creatures and a really fun world building. It was a bit slower at the start, but I was, like, so addicted to it by the end. I couldn't stop reading it. My favorite historical fiction. Most of these are historical fiction horror. But we have Wayward, The Woods All Black, Grey Dog. The Djinn Waits 100 Years, which is a historical fiction / contemporary fiction about this young girl. She moves into a house with her father. It's got a bunch of eccentric people living in it. It used to be a huge manor house on the sea, but now it's like apartments. And then there's half the section is about when it was a manor house on the sea, like 100 years before. And it has this kind of interesting kind of magical element to it, but it also is more about like society and how like women in marriage worked back in the olden days and like things like that. It's really, really good. And then My Darling Dreadful Thing, which is set, I think, in the 1890s or something, maybe the 20s. I can't remember. Anyway, my favorite of these was Grey Dog. I loved Grey Dog. Did I mention what it's about? Okay, so it's this woman. She's a teacher. She's trying to escape her like, abusive dad, and so she takes this post in this small town, and weird stuff starts happening. Very intelligent novel, very kind of slow and brooding, and then it has like moments of creepiness and scariness, and has a wild ending. It's really, really good. I really hope I get it for Christmas. Actually, I requested most of these for Christmas. My favorite literary fiction, so Not Even the Sound of a River. I really enjoyed that. It was a novella. It's very short, very atmospheric, about a boat sinking. I Cheerfully Refuse, which is about a man, his wife dies, he's living in a kind of semi-dystopian future on Lake Superior. He's like, I can't remember, someone's after him. The government, I think. I can't remember why, I read this a while ago, but he takes off on his boat on Lake Superior, which is not really a good idea. And he goes through all of these kind of like, it's him surviving on his boat, but also some other stuff. I really liked it. And then The Morningside, which is about a woman living in this kind of like, it seems like it should be a real country, but it's not. And this girl is living in an apartment building with her mom. Her mom's the superintendent, but her mom also does dives into these sunken buildings, and it's just a kind of coming of age story, and it was really, really nice. And then Blue Light Years is about a woman and her mother. The woman's away at university for the first time. I think her mom's in Venezuela. I can't remember. It's a country in South America somewhere. And so it's them talking, having conversations, like, every other night, every night, just having conversations. And it kind of progresses through her first year at university. And it's a really kind of like soft and lovely story. And I really enjoyed it. I thought it was fantastic. And then Widow Diaries, which is a collection of short stories, literal kind of like stories about women. And also it's relatable to guys as well. Very interesting. My favorite of all of these would be I Cheerfully Refuse. I love boats. I love Lake Superior. I can't help it. They were all really good though. My favorite horror of the year, I've got The Woods All Black, Smother Moss, Where I End, Grey Dog, Morgan Bright, What Feasts at Night, Darling Dreadful Thing. Of all of these, it is Where I End. The body horror in this, the sheer like, of this book is so good. It's so good. Take care when you read it though. It's very heavy. The book that has the most like mind-boggling, has the most kind of wonkiness, weird twist to it, and that is we've got 4. We've got My Darling Dreadful Thing. I can't tell you what the twisty thing is because it would ruin the story for you. I can't tell you what the twist of anything would be. Then The Redemption of Morgan Bright. Where I End has a lot of this as well, and 381 also has a wild concept too. And I would say of all of these, The Redemption of Morgan Bright has the most interesting kind of twistiness going on because it pervades through the whole thing. My Darling Dreadful Thing is more like, is it or is it not? And 381 just has a weird kind of like concept. And then Where I End is just like, as I said, it's just like, But Morgan Bright has it like consistently, and it's so well done. And I also think it's a very important story. I think it's like so important. So totally love that one. The book with the coolest world building, The Inception, has a great kind of dystopian world build. Titan Shade has a lot of fun. Masquerade, which I didn't talk about yet. So this one's set in, I think, in 15th century Africa. South Africa or West Africa? I can't remember. I can't remember specifically which part of Africa, but and it's about this woman who is chosen by the prince to become the queen, but she has to contend with all of these social conventions and the fact that she, doesn't want to be kind of put inside a box. And so it's a really, really, really great, very rich in detail, and you can like kind of just see and smell and taste the whole thing as you're reading it. It's really well done. The West Passage, the world building in that is just wild. Think of like those like medieval pictures you see online, like weird cats and stuff like that, and like all the other weird stuff that's going on. put that in a book, and that's what the West Passage is. The Last Phi Hunter, I thought this had a really cool world building. It's all about these like demon dragon things and this guy trying to collect their souls, I think. Again, I read this a long time ago. And he has to escort this pregnant woman through the forest. The forest is full of these demon things. That whole kind of is based on like Thai folklore, and I thought that was really cool. 381, as I explained, the world building in this is... It was the first book I read this year. I read it a long time ago, but I still like, it's a book I'm like contemplating it, I'm like, I wonder what was really going on. Gog Magog and Lolita obviously had a wonderful world building, and Lost Ark Dreaming. I didn't actually talk about this one. This one, it's also set in Africa, and it is, it's set in the future. It's also dystopian. People are living in these skyscrapers, like in the ocean because of flooding. And so it's all about like societal leveling, stuff like that. But then there is a breach in the lower decks. And so these three people have to go and like investigate it. But then these creatures are coming in, and it's really good. You should totally check it out. It's a novella. It's really good. But my favorite of all of these is 381. I really like the world building in this just because I was never sure what was going on. The coolest concept, I've got a lot here, and The Sky Fell. This one is a fantasy, and it's just about like the world pretty much rains like this blood red substance that the people use to power everything. And so it's very much an environmental fantasy, and it's really interesting. Definitely a debut. It has some debut problems, but I really love the concept. Terraformers, I love the idea of just watching a world be terraformed over centuries. I thought that was cool. It's a bit too cozy at times. Sometimes the tone was off, but I really liked the idea behind it. The Mercy of Gods, I love the idea of kind of like throwing a bunch of humans in with a bunch of aliens, and their kind of survival in these situations is like a prison camp. The Lash Sealed, I love a good adaptation, and adaptation of Die Hard into fantasy was so much fun. This Is How You Lose the Time War is about two agents on opposite sides of like a time battle, like a battle through time. They're fighting to control time, and they fall in love, and I really like that. The Ministry of Time is about people... the British government has discovered a portal or something. I can't remember the details. I'm sorry. But they bring these people back from the past. One of them is the man that was on the Terror, the ship that, that there was the show about it and everything. It's a real ship, real person. They actually bring him back into the future or into now. And this woman has to like onboard him into society. It's a love story. I really liked it. Someone to Build a Nest In. This is about a blob monster who falls in love with a woman. Generation Ship is about a generation ship. It's good. The Three Body Problem, really cool concept about the three body problem, which is like, what if you have a planet with three suns, and like how does that affect things? And it's really, really cool. It didn't blow my mind like some people thought. Like some people are like, oh, this book is like so crazy. I'm like, it's not that crazy. Isn't this a typical physics thing? Anyway, if you want to look that up, look it up. And 381. I'm picking though, This Is How You Lose the Time War. I thought the concept was so fun. I thought it was so interesting, and I love the idea of like these. I love the enemies to lovers. I'm a sucker for that. But also the fact that they like leave messages for each other through time, and that's how they communicate. It was just like so interesting and so well done. The best demon possession. So we've got Asunder, we've got Demon's Rage, we've got My Darling Dreadful Thing, we've got the Null Frequency Impulsor, and Ludluda. All of these have a kind of, I guess not just demon, just any kind of possession. So all of these have a possession aspect to them, and my favorite of this would be My Darling Dreadful Thing. In this one, she is kind of possessed by a ghost, and, or is she? That's the question of the book. My favorite main character. So we've got Katie Mead from Gog Magog and Ludluda. We've got Angie from Smother Moss. That's the small girl who thinks she's Rambo. We have Briar, the main character from The Last Shield. She's basically John McClane. We have Annabelle from The Strange, who is, if you've seen True Grit, she's the girl from True Grit. And Someone to Build a Nest In. That would be the Blob Monster, because she was also amazing. But my favorite main character of the year is Katie Mead from Gog Magog and Ludluda. She is the most acerbic, gross, disgusting old lady you've ever met, and she is amazing. I love her. I want to be her when I grow up. So, yeah. The best side characters. So we have Ajax from Titan Shade. We have the alien boyfriend guy from Pink Eye. I can't remember his name. We have Red Eye from The Demon's Rage. We have the Jinn from the Jinn Waits 100 Years. We have Eddie from Wenemac Web. And we have Finn and Peregrine from The West Passage. I'm picking Finn and Peregrine for sure. They were my favorite side characters. I just loved them. They were so good. Best animal character. We have Heinrich the dog from the Trials of Empire. We have the baby dragons in the Dragon Kings of Oklahoma. And we have the dragon in the Bloodless Prince. And I'm picking Heinrich. I gotta go with the dog. The dog reminded me of my dog Ruger if he was a bit bigger and more of a hound. Less of a sleepy, lazy boy that he is right now. But I mean, he's like almost 12. He's old. But no, I loved Heinrich. The best alien character. We have the Mercy of Gods. We've got all the aliens in there. We've got Strangelove, the main love interest in that one. I can't remember his name. The Wendimac Web, there are a bunch of aliens in there. The Null Frequency Impulsor. I mean, I love a good like light orb alien. They're so fun. They're such like a classic idea. Predator from South China Sea, because I love Predator. Predator's like just one of my favorite aliens of all time. And Kenai, the tree aliens from that. But my favorite would have to be Strangelove. I love him. I loved his character. He was so sweet. And I just love their like romance together. He's so fun. The best sex scene. Well, we have a bunch. But Strangelove, the alien human sex scene. The Woods All Black. I'm not going to tell you what the sex scene is. If you've read this, you know. Asunder. Now that... I mean, honestly, that's probably my actual favorite, but Asunder, one of my best book of the year. So I have to give it to someone else, and I'm giving it to The Woods All Black because I wanted it to go there, and it went there, and I was like, oh! So yeah, totally fun. Totally fun. Not entirely unexpected, but totally unexpected enough that I was like, oh, okay, we're doing it. The best first smooch, and it really only goes to one book, and it's probably why it was my favorite books of the year. The Ministry of Time. The slow burn build up to this is so good, and the first kiss is so good. It just encapsulates it, and it did such a great job. I read it like 5 times. Yeah, so no, totally best smooch of the year. Book crushes. I only have 2. I have Ajax from Titan Shade, as you know, and Red Eye from Demon's Rage. And of course, it's my boy Red Eye. I love Red Eye. I love an old grouchy wizard. I guess he's not old. He's like my age. I just love a grouchy wizard. Grouchy wizards are my type. And I read this series for Red Eye. Sorry to the authors, but that's why I'm reading the books. Best couple / ship on my part. Opal and Arthur from Starling House. They had a really great dynamic. I really liked them. Very classic gothic. So this is a gothic mystery about an old haunted house. It's really good. There's a reason why it's popular. It's very entertaining, very fun. The audiobook's really good. The Woods All Black. Those 2, Leslie and can't remember the name of... I can't remember their name. Anyway, them. The narrator and Gore, who have the best smooch from the Ministry of Time, so you know they're not going to win because they just won the best smooch. Karis and Farian from Asunder, again, already won. Briar and Alaric from The Last Shield, so Briar is the John McClane and Alaric is the Holly Gennaro, and they had this perfect kind of subtle, older person, older meaning like I guess a little younger than me or my age, kind of dynamic. It was so well done. Red and Blue from This Is How You Lose the Time War. And all of them, Briar and Alaric, I shipped them instantly. The instant they were in the room together. And I don't know, the dynamic was just so perfect right from the start. It was subtle, but it wasn't like too subtle that you weren't sure it was happening. Like it was like perfectly balanced, and it's so hard to do that, and especially in a book that isn't a romance. Like it was so well done. I just loved it. I just loved Briar and Alaric. I also loved Alaric. He was great. And because it's funny, we've got best literal ship, like as in a boat, and we've got Generation Ship. We've got the ship from Gog Magog. We've got the ship from the Floating Hotel. We've got the ship from I Cheerfully Refuse. There's a whole bunch of other ships that I'm forgetting, but the ship from Generation Ship was pretty cool. It was very much, it was outlined very well. I really liked the kind of like logistics of the ship and how it was run and how it was set up. The book had a lot of like focus on that, and I really like that in sci-fi when there's like a realistic approach. And so I thought the ship aspect of Generation Ship was really, really good. So I'm giving it to that. And I have one last thing, and that is what book that I read this year that I think everyone should read, and that is Kindred by Octavia Butler. This book, of all the books I read, was the most important book I've read. It's so well done. It just delves into such an important topic. It's harrowing. Your heart's in your throat the whole time you're reading it. It's just, Octavia Butler is an absolute master writer. She is just fantastic. And so if you haven't read anything by her before, this one's fantastic because it's not actually they say it's a sci-fi because it deals a little bit with time travel, but really that's just like the mechanism for the story. It's more a historical fiction, and historical fiction, but also like a critique of contemporary society, contemporary meaning the 1970s, but you can still read it today. Like, we read it with the Interstellar Book Club, and we had so much to say about it. It's so well done. Highly, highly recommended. So yeah, Sunder was my favorite book. Kindred was my book I think everyone should read. And I had a great time with all the books I read this year. I mean, really, there's only like, out of 100, there were maybe like 8 or 9 that I didn't really like. And I mean, other than This Isn't the Villain, I didn't really hate any of them. Yeah. Anyway, so let me know in the comments what your favorite book of the year was. If you want to, go off on me in the comments about Alien Clay, go for it. I'll stand by my stance, which is that alien plants are boring. And that's all I'll say about that. Yeah, so check out Asunder. It's so good. Okay, thanks.